I see it's so baked into everyday life that people don't even like notice it anymore.
What's
and
the
it's
it?
like
What's the it?
like racism.
When you're thinking racism, you're thinking white people and everybody else.
Not only. I feel like people feel like they don't have enough of a voice. And I'm like, well, if your voice didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to take it away.
I would love to give this mic to somebody who's going to say, you know what? I just don't necessarily agree with everything that she just said.
Wait, hang on, just real quick. You said you were born in Puerto Rico.
Born and raised.
Born and raised.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have been up until now.
Up until now.
Okay. All right.
Up until
born and raised.
I got to Penn State.
So tell us just like how you see these issues in the U.S. just from your.
Oh, in the U.S.
But just from your position in Puerto Rico because of that position of being on the edge.
I see it's so baked into everyday life that people don't even like notice it anymore.
What's
and
the
it's
it?
like
What's the it?
like racism, like prejudice. Because being in Penn State, guys, wait, message to the room, saying to someone, "Are you a?" is not a good way to ask their ethnicity. Not a good way to ask their ethnicity. And that has happened a lot since I got here. Oh, what's your immigration status? Okay. In different tones. And I'm like, first of all,
wait, there's a lot of response to what you just said.
I'm sorry if you have said that to somebody. Stop doing it.
Yeah.
Stop doing it.
Okay, so wait, you were saying that racism,
yes,
prejudice is baked into everything.
Everyday life.
So just where is that? Give us tell us what you see.
When my family is gonna go out to dinner with somebody else who isn't also Hispanic, we tell them to put their name on the reservation, like to try to make the reservation under their name. Because sometimes like they'll tell us like, oh yeah, no, we can't seat you because our last name is Lopez. But then we have someone else call and they're like, oh yeah, we have availability for the same party.
Okay. So is there any other example? That's more explicit than baked in, maybe. I don't know, maybe not. But just something that's like so hard for anyone to see. And I'm not saying that's not one of them, but just something else that people, when someone is hearing you say, it's just baked in, which to me makes me feel like I couldn't even see it. What do you see that other people don't see?
Well, most people that don't really experience it don't really notice how much I have to think about it. It's like, oh, I am in this space with a lot of white people. Hi. And sometimes I walk into a room and I have to be like, okay, I have to lock in and make sure I am safe and make sure I don't present myself in a way that could heighten any prejudice.
So what you said just now makes me think what you're saying is when you're thinking racism, you're thinking white people and everybody else.
Not only.
Okay.
Not only.
Okay.
A lot of Latinos are also, but very racist, but it also comes from a place of hurt.
And what's racist?
I heard a lot growing up, like, oh, don't marry that person because then your kids will end up darker and stuff like that. Like we also hold on to a lot of ideas that are rooted in racism.
Skin color.
Yeah.
What you said about skin color, it didn't necessarily define racism. It just but that's I know.
Yeah, but it's not only skin color. It's just falsehoods about people from other places.
Okay.
Like I have a lot of family members who just cannot stand Asians because they had a bad experience with an Asian once, and I'm like, but don't you think that people also think those things about like you because they had a bad experience with a Puerto Rican once, and they're like, not the same thing. Of the same thing.
Okay.
So this in a way goes back to what Luke was saying about like maybe it's never going to go away.
So then what's your solution given what you know?
Well, I think it's so systematic that you can't really expect the solution to be within like obviously educating yourself is so important, but it goes so much more beyond that because yeah, I can educate myself and I do and I try and I know I'm not super aware of everything that's going on, but that doesn't mean that then I can alone enact change. So I feel that while it is our duty to educate ourselves, it is also our duty to band together and be like, guys, wait, we need to also be a part of the conversation with the people that enact change at like a federal level and stuff
So
like that.
you mean people need to change policies, people need to change laws, people need to change the way
yes,
systems are set up.
Put things into place because,
Like what?
well, I'm personally very upset that like DEI is under attack right now because I felt like it addressed a lot of issues like people not being paid what they deserve because they are of a certain demographic, be it women or black women or Latina women. And I feel like those are issues that we have to address because they're like our nation, and I say that kind of begrudgingly, because from a colony, our nation wasn't really made with everybody in mind. It was just kind of made with the white man in mind. And kind of also just the white man with money.
So let me ask you this. Although that has changed a lot, right?
It has. It definitely has, but I still think there's always room for improvement. And we shouldn't just be like, oh, well, things are never going to change because that's just going to fester like this kind of hopelessness in people. And it's like, no, things have changed historically. People have enacted change, and we can continue to do so.
No, an immense amount of change.
Exactly.
Actually. And so, in fact, not only is it an immense amount of change, but
What are you referring to when you say that?
well, I'm just thinking about, you said white man with money, and I'm like, well, actually, from what I see, it's people with money.
Well, yes, actually,
Okay.
yeah.
And it's also countries with money. And so that includes the United States, and Puerto Rico's part of the United States. So it's like Puerto Rico's not Haiti. You know what I mean? Puerto Rico's not the DR, although, you lost electricity and it was out for what, 4 months or whatever?
Oh yeah, love
Okay.
that time. That was so fun, guys.
Okay,
That was so fun.
so then it actually gets really complicated,
Oh, of course it does.
So, but I
Everything's
think
connected.
But I think what you're saying, just to hold it, because I think it's important, is you're like, there are the things people can do, right? It's like going back to, again, Luke, with just like, it won't change, but like, it can change if there's more awareness, et cetera. Media literacy, I can be responsible for that, but you're like, and we need to like look at the design of this. We are looking at the design, but we need to keep looking at the design, and we need to keep shaping the whole system with other premises in mind. That it's built for everyone. It's built whatever ways. We could go into that forever, but you're like system things that then that affect everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, nope, this is the law now. That's not the law anymore. All these different things. You're like, that's part of the conversation.
Of course.
Many things don't change
because
if we
that
don't
affects
change
our
that.
daily lives, and people want to be like, oh, I don't do politics, and it's like, okay, but politics is going to happen around you, and it's going to affect you every single day because that literally dictates how we live our lives.
Okay.
So I feel like people feel like they don't have enough of a voice, and I'm like, well, if your voice didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to take it away.
Okay. Okay.
So this is important, right? This is a very important dimension of how do we solve this.
I would love to give this mic to somebody who's going to say, you know what? I just don't necessarily agree with everything that she just said. I just want to tell you something. 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, but definitely 10 years ago, nobody would have volunteered to come up here and say what they disagree with that she just said. And so talk about change and talk about like the DEI stuff. And the reason is because DEI just shut everything down. It's like, man, you better follow a certain narrative or that's it. And you all are suddenly, a lot of you in here are like, oh yeah, I'll come up. You would never have come up 10 years ago. You'd have just been like, nope. I'll just sit right here, man. So anyway.
And also, you said DEI shut everything down. That's not what you mean, because it also did.
It opened up a lot of cool things. It opened up lots of conversations. We had great conversations in here.
But all you're talking about is a dominant perspective, which I forget who was just up here when we talked about maybe it was you, progress, right? There's been progress. So this became a dominant perspective.
Yeah, it became
which made other perspectives not dominant. And you're saying, oh, wow, if people disagree, so many of you, That's
Freaking awesome.
things are shifting.
And if
Anyway, that's it.
if you're watching on YouTube, what you don't understand is how many people in this classroom would have come up here to speak right now, and that is something that's really a cool change that has happened because we want to hear voices. Okay.
Yes, there are certain people who do come up and like might ask you, "Oh, where are you from? Like, are you from like Mexico?" There's like this like big generalization that everyone who's Hispanic is Mexican, and I'm not gonna like say that it's acceptable because it's not. There's definitely other countries there. I am from Ecuador and Costa Rica, a pretty different.
Yeah, definitely.
Not a pretty popular combo, but I feel like especially like in the Latin community and the Hispanic community, you can't tell who like where you're from at this point. But yeah. Anyways, but
So what are you saying in this?
but I was gonna touch on the fact that yes, there is this like people going like I'm not gonna ignore the fact that people do go up to you and ask you, are you from this country or are you like what your status is. Obviously, depending where you are, it might happen a lot more than others, but I'm not agreeing with the way that she might have worded it. I'm gonna give like the people the benefit of the doubt. Not everyone is like that, and you can't always assume that that's happening to everyone because that's not true.
So you don't want to assume that it's a benefit of the doubt, right? Let me ask you this question: how, from where you stand, how, as a woman who do you identify as Hispanic, Latina, what do you say?
Hispanic.
Just Hispanic.
Yeah.
Okay. How much progress when you? Because you're young. How old are you?
19.
Okay, you're 19. Just from your 19 years and what you hear around you, how far have we come in terms of these kinds of issues?
I think the issue has definitely gotten worse in recent terms because of ICE and all the like exposure to ICE. Like the guy who's like ICE is like under a microscope. I do believe that, but I think it has always been a problem in like especially the Hispanic community.
Wait, just want to.
Yeah.
What's the it that's been the problem? Because I want you to just define.
I guess like racism and like discrimination.
And what is that for you? When you say those words, what are you
Yeah.
referring to?
For discrimination, I feel like that is like people have like already like a mindset of how you and your people are, and then based on that like mindset, they change the way they act towards you.
Do you feel that?
In certain areas, yes, actually. I feel like I have like a professionalism when I'm around people who are not necessarily like me versus like people who like understand like I guess like my heritage and like
Okay, so
the
how do you
culture.
decide who so you see an old white man like me, right? You see me on that, you meet me. What would you assume about me if you just met me?
I thought you were actually Spanish when I first
Okay.
met you.
Okay.
He was playing like some like Spanish rock music at the beginning.
Interesting.
And then you were talking with like Julie, like, can you like hear me in Spanish? So I thought I was like, oh, maybe he's like, he can pass as like Spanish.
because he
but-
was speaking Spanish.
But how do and I used to live in Ecuador and Costa Rica, by the way. I've been in Costa Rica.
From what you know, the people, especially being from Queens and having so many people around you, so many different people, who in your mind doesn't adjust to the people that they meet that they don't know?
I think it's the older generation a lot. I feel like nowadays, yes, we're a little bit more, we have exposure. I think that's the key way to, I guess, like fix the problem. But
Exposure to what?
I guess like everything, like certain problems, like obviously happening here in the U.S., but exposure to problems like having like happen outside of the U.S. and like just having access to that is like a really big step already compared to like the older generation where they didn't grow up on really any technology or like anything like digital.
But what's the problem? Because think about your day-to-day here at Penn State, or the day-to-day of Latinos and Latinas here at Penn State, Hispanic students. What's the problem?
That you're wanting to solve, that we're wanting to solve.
Yeah.
I think it's just like exposing people to different cultures.
So that what doesn't happen?
So that people don't come in with like this like strict mindset of like, oh, people are always like gonna act like this.
You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to ask everybody here who's identifies in some kind of minoritized status. So you're part of the queer community, you're disabled, you're an ethnic minority, a race minority, whatever, to just count up the examples, religious minority, right? You're Jewish or you're Sikh or whatever you are, and count up the examples of the problem as you encounter it throughout the next 10 weeks. And then like in the last week of class, come up and tell us how many experiences you've had. It would be really interesting, to say like, because we talk about the problem, because I started it, let's talk about the problem, and then we have to like make it the problem, and then we keep this conversation going, and I don't even know if the problem is the problem. Like, what's the problem? I don't know.
Or maybe even what we're not talking about is which of those 4 dimensions is the problem.
Yeah, which one of the 4 do you see?
I think is the most problematic.
I feel like it would have to be like racism, maybe.
Because racism is...
I feel like without like racism, the other 3 can't really like happen. So I feel like that might like, because obviously like if you're discriminating someone, you're obviously feeling a certain way. And in this case, like since we're talking about these big 4, I feel like racism causes like a reaction towards these actions that come after.
It might be the biggest impact in the system. I just want to say why bigotry is actually my favorite word on this list. Favorite, not most impactful, not whatever. And I just want to say why. In my view, at every table I've ever sat at any place that I've been in the world, every group is a bigot. Every group of people is filled with their own bigotry. And when I realize that, for me, it points to a solution as well. And so I think that when we realize that we all ignore people in need because we don't believe that certain people are in need, we only believe certain other people are in need.
Okay.
I think that's my favorite.
Okay.